So maybe I try again now.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to call the Springfield Police Advisory Committee meeting to order. I have 6:02 p.m. And Jessica, would you do the roll call, please, so that we can identify all that are with us?
Absolutely. Counselor Joe Pictionary.
I am here.
Brittany De Alicante.
Present, thank you.
Barry Lind.
Here.
Michael Bean.
I'm here.
Isa Avian. Okay. Jack Martin.
Here.
Terry Dillon.
I'm here and I can see everybody.
Great. We have Johnny Kirshenman, who had expressed that he may be absent this evening. Jen McCauley.
Here.
And Eric Adams.
Here.
Welcome, everyone, and take it away, Barry.
All right. You should have received the minutes from February 4th, and we want to approve those, but wanted to first see if there are any changes or corrections that need to be made. If so, could we make them at this time? If not, could someone make a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as stated.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Was that you, Jack?
Yes.
Thank you. So how about, because we got a visual on everyone, is it simply okay to raise our hand if you approve the minutes? Is there anyone that that does not approve them? Okay, Jessica, I see that all are in favor of supporting and approving the minutes. Want to move to business from the audience, but I want to ask this question first from Jessica. Do we have a large list of folks? How many folks do we have a sense of how many folks we're hoping to share tonight?
When I was just looking, it was 17 were present.
Okay. So here's my question to the committee. We've had a 20-minute kind of parameter, 2 minutes apiece, which would allow 10 folks to share. We have on occasion moved that to 30, but not past 30 typically, simply because of the other business that we have to deal with. I need a sense from the team if you want to extend it past 20 minutes to 30, or what's your sense? And I'm open to your thoughts here.
Barry?
Yeah.
This is Joe. I don't, unless the other committee members have a huge issue, I don't have a problem with going to 30 minutes and bringing in as many as we can at the 2-minute mark. And I think that is would be equitable in my mind. And I think too that people need to really know that this isn't the only forum they can communicate with us, and that emails are a great source. And I'm very confident that we all read those emails, so they are heard, but just in a different format. So I think that 30 minutes would be great. With 2 minutes apiece, we should be able to bring in a lot of people. At least most all those people are even just attending. So may not be that all of them are wanting to speak either.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So do we have a general consensus then, folks? You're on a smaller screen now, so I don't necessarily see all of you, but is there anyone is everyone okay pretty much just with going to the 30 minutes then?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm good with the 30.
Okay.
I'm happy with it.
All right. All right. So we're going to move to business from the audience. And I just want to reinforce to the audience that's listening and maybe participating tonight that we appreciate them joining us and for the input they'll give to us tonight. I want to reinforce what Joe was sharing, and that is there are other ways as well, if they don't get a chance potentially to share tonight, that if they were to send an email to Jessica at the Springfield Police Department. That goes out to all of this committee. And then beyond that, be in contact with your the city council folks, because they're truly the ones that have the ability to affect more changes than this team as a whole. So I want to encourage that as well. So before we begin, though, I just want to say to the audience that just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. As a committee, we'll listen to your comments and will not respond until the committee response portion. So we're going to go 2 minutes apiece for 30 minutes listening to what you have to say. And then if there's response from the committee, we'll respond at that time. All the minutes that are being taken will be forwarded to the city manager and the city council. Members of the public, as I said, can always write a written testimony and send it to us for us to hear. As we begin the meeting tonight, I'd ask the members of the audience to please keep yourself on mute until you are called to provide public testimony. Public testimony will allow speakers 2 minutes each. And if you're joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, computer, and wish to speak either of those times, please use the raise hands feature to make your request. You will be called on when it's your turn to speak. Please identify your name, Springfield ward number, and the subject you'd like to speak about. For people calling in by phone only, you are in listen mode and only and cannot be called upon. So thank you for letting me go through that. And we're ready to listen to those that are ready to share.
Okay, thank you. And before I begin, I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping. That Michael Bean, I do see that you have raised your hand, and I wasn't sure if that was intentional. So I'm just mentioning that on a logistical standpoint. But our first speaker this evening from the public is Lauren Williams. And Lauren, I have indicated that you're allowed to talk at this time. And I think you can unmute on your side.
Thank you. I did. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Lauren Williams and I live in Ward 2. I would like to address my comment tonight to everyone, but in particular, I'd like to address my comment to you, Mr. Martin. I was really struck by what you said at the last SPAC meeting on February 4th of this year. I wrote down what you said in case you don't remember. You said, to quote you, you said, "I'm very opinionated towards the police department and how they're doing their business because I know a lot of these officers and I see them on a regular basis and I speak to them every time I see them." And I really haven't been able to stop thinking about that, especially since your last meeting and with all of the news breaking. I think it would be understandable if you felt protective over the department, especially if you've developed personal relationships with SPD. But as a friend of mine pointed out, just because they're nice or professional to you doesn't mean that they're always nice and professional with others. So I'm wondering if like your thoughts and feelings have evolved with the onslaught of new confirmed misdeeds the department has committed just within the last year, or the 3 new lawsuits filed since this committee last convened. I think this would be a really great opportunity to show strong leadership skills and admit that that was maybe not a great statement. I think it'd be a great opportunity for an apology. And I just want to say that as being part of the community, I know others are listening, that we hope that you really step up to the challenge. Thanks. I yield my time.
Okay, the next individual to speak is Kirsten Vignetta. And I believe you have the ability to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Great. Good afternoon, Police Advisory Committee. I'm Kirsten from Ward 2. I first wanted to express my gratitude to the city and specifically Nancy Newton for taking the matter of police misconduct and excessive use of force seriously enough to place Chief Lewis on leave as these matters get investigated and as a course of action is determined. It gives me the hope that perhaps Springfield is taking a turn towards taking this issue seriously moving forward. This is really a matter of trust between an increasingly diverse community and the public servants that are supposed to keep our community safe. And that's not just some community members, it's all members of the community, regardless of race, gender, political affiliation, class. The lawsuits and complaints that have been filed against SPD in recent years are indicative of a festering problem that needs to be seriously addressed. And it's a pressing matter of public safety and community well-being. Lives have been lost and lives have been deeply affected. This is tragic and frustrating to say the least, and it's a matter that's made worse by SPD's inaction in addressing their troublesome record. A police officer has the power to dramatically alter or even end someone's life. And so with that power should come an equally immense level of scrutiny, training, evaluation, and transparency. I also recognize that police officers at large are asked to carry out more roles than they are trained for, making their job excessively difficult. And so what I'm hoping to see in Springfield is more services like Cahoots and other social services that can adequately tackle nonviolent calls, followed by a complete restructuring and assessment of police culture within SPD that can ensure that police officers are adequately screened, trained, and supported long-term to properly handle violent calls. Thank you.
Thank you. The next individual to speak is Amy Cothran, and I've enabled your ability to speak.
All right. Good evening, everyone of the committee. My name is Amy Cothran, formerly of Ward 5, but I've recently left Springfield partially due to feeling unsafe. First things first, I would like to see the status of a complaint that I filed on February 6th. Since that time, I've been reached out to by Mayor Van Gordon. I've been reached out to by the city manager. I've had a city council member check in on me. I have heard 0 words from SPD. The fact that you can't even handle simple stuff like this is friggin' appalling. Next up, we have the body cameras that y'all are looking to implement this summer. With those body cameras, it's been found that they are ineffective if you allow them to be turned off. With those body cameras, you need to have regulations that come in. If an officer tampers with one, like Officer Conrad did back at the Thurston protest in July, that once they have tampered with that camera, there needs to be consequences no matter what happens after that. If it malfunctions, if anything happens that can't be proven to be the fault of the camera, they need to be disciplined for that. Third, now is the time to restructure. Now is the time to figure out your shit and get your department in order. You know, we've been telling you all summer. This week, we've had 3 or 4 stories about you in, you know, Oregon Live and stuff, and it's a huge black eye on the city. You know, if you just replace Chief Lewis, which, you know, based on the investigation and whatnot, we're going to be back here soon with Chief whoever's next saying the exact same stuff because the exact same problems are going to persist. So you need to restructure. Now's the best time to do it. I yield the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. That actually is the last individual who's indicated interest in speaking this evening. So I think,
There you go.
Barry, I'm going back
Yep.
to you.
I just want to say thank you again to those who spoke tonight. I appreciate you sharing, taking the time to share with us tonight. Going to open it up to the committee if there's a response that anyone wants to make. Now is the time to do so. Joe, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I went ahead and stuck my hand up first because I've got a extremely high amount of interest in the recent happenings and even not so recent happenings. I read the reports front to back very thoroughly, very slowly. And I got to tell you, there's some of those were jaw-dropping moments, and that those are things where, you know, the way I see them from my angle, those are huge areas where we just can do better, and to not look at it as we're doing bad, but we need to recognize that we need to do better and move that direction. That's the only way we're going to make good change, and it's going to protect the citizens. It's going to protect the city. My huge concern is that we need to protect the city and its citizens, and the only real tool to do that is with and through our police department and our officers at the police department. So I am looking forward to basically a line-by-line debrief of those reports, and I want to be able to see some answers, and I want to be able to see how to answer some of those recommendations and recognize, and people do need to recognize, that because someone makes 33 recommendations or 43 or 103 doesn't mean that all those recommendations would be appropriate, or they are already duplicated somewhere else and just not recognized. So don't get fixated on the numbers. And we may, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it could be more changes than what's just stated. That's, the door is open. But I can tell you, I am really looking forward to seeing things on paper. I would like to have this board look at policy change and to provide input at the recommended policy change as draft, and then return those or send those up through to the council. So that way the council knows it's not only produced and created by the users of the policy based on city attorney review, et cetera, legal review, but also from the eyes of members of the public, which is members of a diverse public here on this committee. So we could, you know, I would like to see this committee look at those policies and provide input. And, you know, if anything, there will be a lot of education, because, you know, folks just aren't academically aware of all the different policies and laws. And it'd be a great place for this committee and members of the committee to educate themselves on what's appropriate, what's not necessarily good or bad. So all I see this is I'm very anxious to see what we can do with this. I very much feel for the family, the Kenny family, what very tragic. But anyway, I'm a goal-oriented type person. I think this is a great opportunity to look at things in front of us and get some changes made and done and in a expeditious manner. So that's my input, and I think I can pretty well speak for the council. And when it comes to that, is that I think every one of us want to see, you know, what can come out of this, and in a expeditious manner.
So Joe, part of my question is, how does this committee best go about doing that? In other words, it almost feels like in order to really review policy and have input, it almost seems like it could be a need for a working session. I'm just throwing that out. I'm just thinking out loud, but how do you best see us doing that?
Oh, pardon me. I could easily see picking one or two policies, depending upon what type of policy, and George can chime in anytime, but he's well aware that there's certain, okay, use of force policy. We know that's more than 2 pages. So it really kind of depends upon how large that policy is. If we can squeeze in 2 or 3 or whatever revisions to some policies, bring it forward to this committee. The PD can draft or scribe what our input is, go back and see if they can remodel that to still stay within the lawful parameters and safe parameters for the public and for the staff and, for the officers. And then bring that draft that's had the eyes of this committee to the council and say, okay, this is what the committee's looked at. This is what the PD's looked at. We're both okay with this. Council, what do you feel? And it may be someone on the council says, no, there's one part here that I don't like, and it may need to go back. But I really would like to have your folks to be able to have, stand behind what your folks' opinion is, because I know my experience is much different than yours. And I'm not saying I'm any better for it, probably worse for it. But my thing is that I really want to see a lay person's responses and their input to recommendations from the PD. And we just got to look at it from that perspective, because if you can't understand it, or it doesn't make sense to you, or it runs contrary to what you think, then the public is. And that's where we need to fix it.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, Brittany.
Thank you. Thank you both for that. And thank you, Councilor Cuccineri, for your for your commitment there. It's really good to hear. And I just want to echo that I would really support a work session to focus on policy. And I also reviewed the body worn camera policy in a lot of detail and have a lot of feedback and comments, and would be really happy to continue engaging in that way to provide the kind of layperson perspective that Councilor Cuccineri is talking about. I also want to see if there's a way we could maybe follow up with Amy directly, or have somebody from SPD follow up. I've heard Amy testify time and time again and give comment. And if somebody from SPD, even if they've already tried to reach out, could try again, I would strongly support that as well.
Thank you.
I would like to comment. I think what you say, Joe's an excellent idea. I'm sure there's so many policies that probably need to be reviewed. It's a full-time occupation. But, I think it was 38 recommendations. And the last time the chief was here, or I heard on the news, said they've already implemented some of those. So I would like to see a little more transparency about which ones were actually implemented, which ones they don't want to implement. There needs to be some transparency about those recommendations, specifically which ones won't be followed, which ones do. I also want to say I am just stunned and outraged over the sexual impropriety. Now, we lost another chief when the command staff were acting out in predatory sexual behaviors. That's a culture. And to see it rise up again, and I don't know all the details, but I did get some. And that's just unacceptable. And that's a department culture. And I think that needs to just be addressed. It's victimization, and and it's a culture from the command that went through the rank and file when they were sharing pictures and comments and things, and that is horrible, just horrible. So I just want to go on record that needs to be dealt with clearly, like it should have been dealt with many years ago. Also, we made an effort to change that culture to impact. And after reading the news, and I am so discouraged that every week I'm picking up the Register Guard about another lawsuit and another lawsuit. And I work with the courts enough to know that Springfield's going to lose these. It's going to cost a lot more money. And it needs to be investigated. I think it needs to be investigated and addressed by the city council. Okay, enough said.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. That was really well put. And I strongly agree with that. It is demonstrative of a cultural problem, and it needs to be seriously addressed.
Any other committee members that haven't yet had a chance to respond that want to say something at this time? Okay, want to move to business from the Springfield Police Department, and Lieutenant Crowley is joining us tonight. Thank you. for doing so under certainly difficult circumstances at best. So just you being here is appreciative. And will you just only, I know you can only address so many things and you need to be clear about that, but you want to respond to what the committee said and go from there, please?
Sure, I'll do my best. Obviously, I'm somewhat restricted what I could say due to the pending litigation with lawsuits. I'm also restricted what I could say due to the investigation, and marching orders from the city manager's office are to not have any public comment due to preserve the integrity of the investigations, quite frankly, as well as regarding the Thurston report. I can gloss over some details. I can tell you that I agree with a lot of the concerns that have been brought up by Joe, by Brittany, by Michael, about the need to evaluate and change things. Any department that looks at themselves and think they don't have to change things is going to get stuck in the past. So that sentiment is very agreeable to everyone in charge here, and including line staff that work here. So I hope you appreciate the fact that I can't comment specifically on the investigations, but I can tell you all the matters are being taken extremely seriously. We've consulted with other members of city leadership to make sure that not only are we evaluating things, we're having a third party, in a sense, reevaluate and take a look at and investigate and make sure we're not just policing ourselves, that we're actually inviting criticism. And any leader that can't accept criticism isn't going to be a successful leader. And criticism can be constructive; it can be destructive too. We've experienced all that over the years. But if we could take bits and pieces of criticism and improve on it, we'd be crazy not to do that.
I know you can't say much, except for I think we do need to, it's already been acknowledged, but that Chief Lewis has been put on administrative leave. And
That's correct.
Whatever you want to say about that, I think would be appreciative. If nothing else for me, it's just, what is the chain of command now as well?
Okay, so yes, Chief Lewis is on an administrative leave, and the language straight from the city manager is in order to protect the integrity of the investigation, to not comment on specifics. It's a personnel matter, and they're going to try to dot all the I's and cross all the T's and do this the right way, which is admirable. I mean, it's the only way to do things. In the meantime, Lieutenant Matt Nywert is the acting chief of police. There's two other lieutenants, myself and Lieutenant Tom Rapay, and we'll be supporting Lieutenant Nywert in the meantime. I know the city manager's office is going to evaluate bringing in someone else if need be to supplant Lieutenant Nywert, to make sure that we have a leader and all the lieutenants can actually focus on our jobs at hand. We're wearing multiple hats right now. We're balanced. It's a balancing act. I've been here 23 years, and this is new to me. All this change, and we're gonna just roll with it and do the best job we can. Not only just for the citizens, for all the committees that have input, but for our employees. The one thing I want to stress is a vast majority of our employees are hardworking, good people that keep their heads low, nose to the ground, do hard work, save lives every day. And we need to address the percentage of employees that don't do that efficiently and don't do that well and don't represent our citizens, and take care of that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Could you, whatever, I don't know what you can say about I've read the Thurston demonstration report, and whatever comments could you make about that? And then
yes,
Michael did ask a question, and
okay,
again, that I thought was worth at least, if you, whatever you can address for that. I think, Michael, you said there were 38 recommendations. We've done some. What have we done? Is there some we're choosing not, or some that are in? Could you address all of that? Michael, did I represent you well?
I think so. There were 38 recommendations. The reviewer, the investigator, was hired via the city manager for the city council. So I imagine the report goes to them to review, comment, and see. But the last time I talked or listened to the chief, said, yeah, there are 38, really good suggestions, and we've already implemented some. And that kind of caught me by surprise. So, that's good news. And if that is true, I would like to know what they are. So there's full transparency that exactly, we have good meaning people and we're going forward. So.
And can I add one question to that too, if possible? Can we also review why those changes were already made? Like if it was the outcome of a previous lawsuit or if it was because of SPD trying to make changes on their own behalf, like without it being mandated in a lawsuit?
So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to be a little bit vague on this because 24 employees in this department are being sued by a group in federal court, and that is going to limit what publicly we can say, and that's the advice of several attorneys. So as far as specific changes, specific issues of the 38 recommendations, I can't go into the specifics. I will say they have dealings with training that were identified immediately after the protests and prior to the report coming out, training issues that we have to address involving responding to those type of things. There's policies that we have been in process of changing for the last almost year regarding the use of force policies, things like that. That's going to address some of the concerns. Some of it's training as far as you see the word ICS and NIMS throughout the beginning of the report. And those are incident command systems, national incident management systems that are start at a federal level, work your way down. They're typically used a lot in fire service for command and control of major incidents. We do practice that, and we do work with other agencies with command and control. We can always continue to work in that training and refresh our training and our knowledge. As far as anything else about the recommendations, because of the pending lawsuit, I'm directed not to make any comment about specifics. I'm sorry.
There's some irony there. In order to be transparent with the public, you're not allowed to comment anything because there are all these lawsuits, and that doesn't build trust when, sorry, can't tell you.
I understand, Michael. I don't disagree with you. However, I do look forward to a lot of the facts coming to the forefront on all of the lawsuits that are pending, or complaints that are pending, or torts that are pending, because unfortunately, like anything else, not all the facts are out there.
Sure.
And that's we're relying on investigators and lawyers to allow for the proper release of all that information. Trust me, to a person, I would love to tell you a lot of the details and facts that I know about various topics on this. It's just wildly inappropriate for me to make those comments in a public forum.
Do you guys have a public relations specialist? Because you're losing in the public opinion, the public trust.
We don't have a public relations specialist. However, we're in the process right now. We just started finished hiring process and starting a background on a new public information officer that will be employed here, hopefully in the very near future. Obviously, I can't disclose who that is yet, but we did interviews. Recommendations have been forwarded for background for that individual, and we hopefully have that person in place here in the next few weeks. And that person has experience with a lot of communications, public communications, media relations, things like that.
Good idea.
It's a great idea. We have a lot of things we can address and say, what can we do better? And that's one of them. Go ahead, Joe. I see you raise your hand.
Brittany, we'll come to you after that, okay?
So just a quick question. It's in regards to, I think I saw in the report that there may be something that is off point that was in the Thurston report from Mr. Brazil, and he indicated that there was the use of force policy, that a use of force report wasn't required unless there was unless someone had been injured. or there was a complaint of injury or property damage. And I wanted to know if that was, it seemed like he, in my opinion, or I should say, just with my background, it seems like he was off point, and he said that needed to be fixed. And I was thinking that I would be shocked if that was the only criteria for requiring a use of force report.
You're correct about that. I think report could be replaced with the word review. Right now, our current review process has to do with initial supervisor approving use of force report. All use of force has to be reported by officers, first of all. The first level of evaluation is from a sergeant, a shift supervisor who reviews the report. That report gets forwarded to a professional standard sergeant who does a secondary review of the report and evaluates use of force. And based on their evaluation, if it's found to be within policy, that's where that review ends. If it's found to be out of policy, that is elevated up to the next level, which goes to a lieutenant, chief, or internal affairs for additional investigation. So I think he's referring to requesting a more in-depth process for review on use of force. The good news on that is that's been addressed in our new use of force policy, that we have expanded the protocol for when we review use of force on a higher level, on a command level, on an internal affairs level. That will be dealt with on other uses of force having to do with degrees of injury, not just handcuffing somebody, pushing them in the car. Technically, our officers check that as a use of force right now. If somebody stands outside the door, doesn't want to get in the car, we have to push them in the car. That is a use of force, and we check that box. That in itself is not going to trigger a whole review process. The new policy will expand that to where any uses of force that require medical attention, essentially, will require a review. So I think that's what Mr. Brazil was referring to about improving on that.
Yeah, but see, there was a trigger point that it caused me pause, is that, for example, in uses of force, there's many different types of uses of force. You use the example of physically pushing somebody into the car, squeezing them in there. But to me, a use of force can also be, for example, you pull out a taser and you display it on somebody and you say, okay, do as I tell you to do, or I will tase you. And lo and behold, they do it. So that was a de-escalation instead of going to a higher level of force. But to me, that in itself is a use of force.
It is. That's a specific checkbox on the use of force report. When our officers use force, that's one of the drop-down items is display taser. And while it shows as a use of force, it is a de-escalation that display helps prevent physical contact and injury to officers or suspects.
Right. And it makes complete sense. But then I'm taking it one step further too. And forgive me if I'm boring the rest of you folks, but I'm really so I guess there's policies, when does it become a narrative in regards to a use of force as opposed to checking drop down boxes? So when is a narrative also, anytime they make a check mark in those boxes, are the supervisors looking in the narrative of the report, how they addressed when they check mark whatever box, that they address that in the narrative, so that way in the future people can look back at that and say, okay, a taser was displayed, and this is what precipitated that in the body of the report. But I'm curious too, is that at some point there should be, I guess I'm trying to find out where the mandatory use of force report occurs when it's written. Is that I think it should be, if there's any injury to the officer or subject involved, is there any physical body, property damage such as torn clothing or et cetera, or any complaint of injury should, in my mind, automatically trigger, and also the use of any weapon that caused or is a precipitous of that type of injury or any injury or complaint of injury. That would be, seems like that if that's articulated in the use of force reporting, then that would make me happy. So I'm just confirming, I think you do have that, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then towards the latter part, I'm starting to lose I was honed in on that. So at what point in a use of force report, and I think it's very important because I think it was brought up in both reports, is that you're talking about the review process and you're talking about command staff, et cetera, which is, it's a must. But at what point, because these officers are all taught, and they're all taught by use of force instructors of different disciplines, whether it be defensive tactics, firearms, baton training, handcuff training, pepper spray, taser training, all these different disciplines. At what point do you think there's, I should say, I guess what I want to know is, when does it trigger review by these instructors so they can look at what they're doing and saying, okay, our instruction was this, and it appears as though the officers are taking it here. So where can we change or look at our curriculum or our practices and our training to where we can mold it to where we want to go this direction and not so quick this way? Or, does that make sense to anybody?
Yes, it makes sense to me. I'll try to expound upon it and answer some questions if need be, but things are constantly changing. With use of force reporting, with instructors, with certifications. And right now we have a new defensive tactics use of force sergeant, and he's being very proactive about evals and reviewing all use of force reports. And we're looking at starting a quarterly review of use of force, so he and team of instructors can go through, and the instructors not only defensive tactics or jujitsu, but they're also de-escalation and CIT trained. So where it's not just how to best use your baton or your firearm, it's what tactics can you use, or how can you hold yourself to avoid having use force? What verbal skills can you use to avoid use of force?
Right.
Where we're looking at, and this is at his request, and it makes total sense. That's what helps having new blood coming in and evaluating a problem, is doing a quarterly review of use of force for that reason. So just like we do with our pursuits, is we sit down with our instructors, we read every pursuit, we say, what can we do better about this? How do we avoid that? Same thing with uses of force. It's going to be, how do we minimize an injury to a suspect? What can we do to change what we're teaching our officers? And what's the best practices that are being taught nationwide? How do we get, in compliance with that and in line with that, but still address our unique situations that may be local to just Springfield or Oregon or the Northwest that's different from something in the Southeast. So that's going to be something we're actually evaluating right now as we speak, doing quarterly reviews with experts in our department to identify just every use of force and say, hey, that was good, but I'm seeing a trend here and we need to stop this before it becomes an issue.
I'm glad to hear that. And again, I'm sorry for taking up so much time in this committee. The other thing I would like to add, and it sounds like you're already starting to, is that when you have a cadre of instructors that have been in place for multiple years, and then you have these issues come up, then I think it would behooves us to look at the cadre and say, not only does a change in policy need to occur, that maybe the change of instructors cadre make some changes as well. But it sounds like you've got a placement, the person's reviewing that, and hopefully they're being very, not assertive, but very proactive when it comes to looking at that, because we can try to change everything you want with policies all day long and into next year. But if you don't change the ways that people are brought up and raised, so to speak, then we're just going to continue that culture. So anyway.
And then the cadre change it happens over time, whether we want it to or not. People move on, people lose interest, people retire, and new folks come in with different backgrounds. When I went through the police academy, they were still teaching hair takedowns, how to grab hair and bring someone to the ground. Pepper spray was used by everybody back then. We're changing now, we've evolved, but for a long period of time, our use of force instructors were guys like me or much older than me, if you can believe that, that learned different techniques, learned older techniques, and didn't quite adapt over the years. Right. And like any other business or industry, we have to just try our best to infuse new blood and get people to be comfortable adapting to new procedures, technologies, ideas. And we are getting better at that. We're not perfect at it. Anybody that says we can't improve is wrong. We can always improve and listen to what other people's ideas are, new instructors.
As long as I heard that, you're open to moving the instructors around, getting some fresh blood in there, getting some not 1985 style, but 2021 style in there is a good deal. Thanks. I apologize for taking up so much time, folks.
Thank you, Joe. I wanted to get to Brittany. I know that you had a question, I think.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, just real quick. And I think Councilor Kushner, you started talking about this earlier, but since Lieutenant Crawley cannot talk about the Thurston assessment, can you provide more of a plan? Does like council have a plan to address it in more detail that can be shared?
We just got it literally a few days ago. And I took some time out amongst all the, regular business, but sitting down and reading that uninterrupted from front to back, and actually twice. And so we literally, it's really literally fresh on our plates. And, it was turned over to the public just almost immediately after we got it. We haven't been sitting on it. So I haven't even met with other counselors regarding it yet. So but it's still fresh on the frying pan. Heat's turned up. No doubt that it's going to come to a boil here, and we're going to look at that and come up with the right recipe. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Unless somebody else has a question about that, I can talk about a couple other things. I'm looking at the agenda. Some requests. Looks like policy review regarding body worn camera and project update. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to take a look at our body worn camera policy. I've done some press releases lately. I've spoken with Register Guard, KVAL, and some other media outlets. We updated our webpage to put a lot of information out, including FAQs. The FAQs we just pushed out yesterday. We're contracting with the firm to translate it all into Spanish. So we'll have both versions on our website. I've met with several groups around town, and actually, Brittany, you're on my list of people to talk. I just spoke with, I'm going to forget his name, Juan Carlos Valle, regarding outreach to Hispanic Latino community. We've done outreach with other faith-based organizations and minority groups around town so far. I was at a Chinese Christian church a couple days ago. Our plan is to not just say, hey, here's what we're doing, so you know, it's also to get some feedback on that, get some, so everybody maybe alleviate some fears about what's going on, tell them what to expect, what not to expect if we're in a situation, where a body camera would be on or off. It's not just to tell people what to do, it's interact with people. So I would like to hear from you if there's a group of folks that I can address, or at least at a minimum, if you have access to any groups like that, share those FAQs and see if there's some ideas for feedback people have. That's part of the outreach we're working on right now. As far as the project update goes, we're still on pace for May to begin deployment of the cameras. The orders placed. A lot of the delay had to do with compliance with BJA grant and waiting for approval from them before we can enter a contract. So that came earlier, I believe, first week of March. That approval came in. We've worked out the contract details with the vendor, working out details right now on installation of the ICV systems on the cars. So we'll be fully prepared and ready to go and move forward with body cams. Use of force policy is in its final stages. It's in City Attorney Mary Bridget Smith's hands right now for everything to be finalized. Hopefully that'll happen. My hope is by next week that is done, and the next process with that is educating our officers of what the changes are. And it's not just a email that says, hey, read this policy with no accountability. As anybody does email business knows, you send an email out, some people read, some people don't, and they don't always read right away. Sometimes it sits there for a while. So in addition to the email, and it's going to be roll call training and briefing where our sergeants go over the changes in policy to make sure everybody's on board with it, get acknowledgement from every officer of understanding what the changes are. And then furthermore, Sergeant Wilson, our defensive tactics and use of force instructor, will be doing additional training with all staff to make sure everybody understands the details of what's changed, what's not, reporting requirements, de-escalation techniques, additional ideas for what to do. I've been tasked with heading up the force review committee. And as soon as I get the last bit of language back from my city attorney's office, I'll know exactly how to move forward with that. And we have the idea how to structure it and who will be a part of it. And now it's going to be a matter of making sure we get people trained the right way to do it. I'm not just going to pick a few officers and say, you're on the committee without even evaluating, training and make sure they're qualified to be on that committee. Business cards. I got an email this morning from Jess from the entity responsible for the cards. And I've got a stack of paper here all over the place, but I can tell you the email says they're still waiting. They're shorthanded at the business card factory, which I believe has something to do, it's a local firm, and we're waiting for them to be printed. We've got cards printed that have information about not only in English and in Spanish, detailed information about how to contact us, who you spoke with, when to contact us. It looked cluttered initially, to be honest. We all gave some feedback. The back of the card had all kinds of check boxes about best time to call, day of the week we work. With our rotating schedule, we had to take that off because nobody works the same days every week. But we want to provide people the right information on that. The language for the business card policy is being reviewed by command staff. Hopefully the review will be finished tomorrow. We will start working on incorporating that into policy. And that language has to do with when to hand out business cards. And it's going to be at all contacts, all traffic stops, any pedestrian stops, is to offer a business card to that person. Furthermore, it'll detail that if somebody asks for a business card, you are to give it to them. And that's the language we're proposing, and we're working the details of how to make that language into policy as we speak. It says in-car video. I talked about that. We're just working on vendors and trying to set up the logistics of getting 20 some odd cars in and out of shops on a regular basis to get stuff installed without taking too many cars offline, because we have to have a certain amount operable. So it'll just be a rotating, get a car in, get a car out, and work on that as quickly as possible. Let's see here. So noting here about budget process.
Can I go back for just a second, if that's okay?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I apologize that I'm not as familiar with the body worn camera as I should be. I know Brittany had some thoughts, and maybe the two of you will connect. So Brittany, make sure that has that opportunity to share. But there was a mention from the audience of the concern of it being turned off and on. Can you just talk about that and that concern that came up? I just wanted to make sure that the folks know we're hearing what their concerns are.
Absolutely. First of all, the policy we submitted addresses those concerns to a certain extent. The feedback we got on the policy we submitted is that it's a model policy. It's the best policy they've seen. That being said, there are times when body cams will be deactivated or can be deactivated. And those times are generally going to be like a tactical planning situation, in an event like that where tactics aren't going to be shared. There's going to be times where an officer may be interviewing a sexual assault victim, and it's outlined in policy, and those type of things are reasonable, regular things to do in a hospital setting where we're in a hospital and there's protected medical treatment happening or information being shared. It's all best practices and standard throughout the industry of when to do these deactivations. And there are times where they should not be deactivated. And obviously, if there's a policy violation, that will be addressed through discipline. Okay. The good news out of all that, everybody here is super eager to get body cameras right now. Okay. I don't think that could be said 20 years ago. I think 20 years ago, cops looked at that as, what are you doing questioning me? You should trust me. I trust my word. Well, times have changed. And for one reason or another, an officer's word isn't always good enough for people. I get it. It frustrates me, but I get it. So that body cam is going to supplement what those officers have to say. They welcome it. And we will deal on a case-by-case basis. If there's a time that body cam was deactivated and it violates policy, that will be dealt with through discipline. If there's a technical issue for some reason or another, the body cam fails because of a hardware, software, wiring issue, that's going to be first on our list of priorities to fix. And that's why we have extra cameras, so we could swap out the bad one and put in a new one to where those type of things don't happen that much. Murphy's Law, things are going to happen. We're going to have to do our best to minimize bad things from happening with equipment malfunction, things like that, but do our best to address the issue when we're made aware of a problem, quite frankly.
Thank you. Joe.
Oh,
Brittany, you may have, did you have something else actually? And then after you're done, I can talk, I can ask a question.
And then
Oh.
Jessica's got her hand too.
Well, no, mine was more, I like went kind of like what you were describing, Councilor Pichonier, going line by line through the policy. I think because I knew I kind of misunderstood maybe what we were going to be doing in the meeting today. But I would really encourage, I would love to connect with you, Lieutenant Crawley, but I would also encourage any review of the policy to be done in a public forum, because some of the things I have flagged were things that people flagged in comment. And I think the public being able to hear that discussion could really help with some of the transparency we've been trying to address. And I was really great. Oh, I also wanted to say thank you for putting all the policies online. I saw that, and I'm so glad to hear they're being translated into Spanish. And that was something I was really glad to see. So thank you so much for doing that.
You're welcome. And one more thing, I'm blaming COVID for some issues here and there. I look forward to the day when each and every one of you can actually hop in a car with one of our officers, drive around and see how the cameras work, see how the ICV works. Somebody brought up earlier, I don't remember who it was Michael or Joe, or maybe even Brittany, about how use of force reporting works in a report in a car. I'd love for you to see firsthand how these laptops are in the car and show you how the report writing's done, how the boxes are checked, so you see firsthand how that works and how efficient it is or inefficient it is, and why we constantly evaluate vendors, software, hardware to make sure we're doing it the best way possible. I can tell you all day long how narratives are typed and boxes are checked, but it pays off to see firsthand. And that's one thing I really miss with COVID, is the inability to have people in our car, either just average citizens, committee members, citizens police academy members. That's how you educate people, seeing things firsthand.
And
Barry, could I have
Yes,
just a
please.
moment?
Yes.
I did just want to take an opportunity and share that the draft body-worn camera policy was of a topic of discussion and review in the December 3rd, 2020 meeting. And so my understanding of bringing the final version back was to try to assist in that closing the loop on that there was discussion, that there was some additional changes made, and present what the final or the status of the final active version of the body camera policy is at this time. That doesn't mean that there can't be further topic. It's just when there is the draft policy and discussion, we had thought that there was benefit to bring the final version back to the committee. So just trying to provide that perspective.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm new to this. I'm trying my best to navigate through what's happened in the past and how this works. Please forgive me if I don't have it all in line and the best answer is ready for you. I'm going to try my best.
no excuses, George.
So I'm also new to chairing, but my suggestion, if it's okay with the committee, is that Brittany does meet and give some input, and then whatever comes out as a result of that is reported back to the team as a whole. Is that acceptable to the group?
Yes.
Yeah.
That sounds great suggestion.
The reason why I raised my hand up a little bit earlier is to piggyback on what Brittany was saying. I was going straight to page 6 because I wanted to see the policy, but it's a comment on bottom of page 6 where it says, if an officer fails to activate a body-worn camera or fails to record the entire contact, the officer shall document the reason or reasons in the report. If no report is generated, the officer shall ensure documentation is made in the CAD incident, and such documentation shall include the reason for deactivation, which totally makes sense. What I don't see there, and it could be that I didn't see it somewhere else in the policy, George. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but what I kind of would like to have seen there is the what if. It's basically is if an officer fails to record, and other than the fact that I'm going to document I failed to record, that where's the review that if and you mentioned it earlier, said, well, hey, if they're not following this policy, you go into a discipline cycle, et cetera. But I don't see where it says violation of this criteria will trigger, if it's found to be in violation of policy, will trigger an investigation.
Now, you won't find that anywhere in policy because there's no, you can't say if this, then that within policy. It's not the appropriate way when you're doing discipline. It's a case-by-case basis.
Right.
It's labor law really restricts you from saying, well, if you do this, then this is going to happen to you. So a supervisor review of the report and seeing that is what triggers. And we're still working on procedures of how to do this. And that'll be part of procedures of when a supervisor sees there's a violation, that's the supervisor's responsibility is to trigger the investigation or into why that didn't happen. And it may be as simple as I got out of my car and chased after this guy and I didn't push the button because he had a gun and I pulled the gun first. There's going to be reasons sometimes, other times there's not going to be a satisfactory reason. And that's the supervisor's responsibility.
But I'm just saying, typically in my past history, when there's policies, there's somewhere usually in each of those policies that says failure to abide by these policies may trigger a disciplinary process, et cetera, and it just seems like it's either lacking a lot, and it could be that I'm really showing my old age and it's kind of moved away from there. But it seems like that if it's not addressed and putting people on notice saying, hey, this is serious business, and intentional or reckless violation of this policy may include disciplinary action up to and including termination. That was the old language back then.
That covers, that's the whole policy manual. That the whole policy manual, that's what that covers. That's what a policy manual is. So that's right. For the whole manual, for everything in there, from in your car to violating any policy, you're subject to anything from or reprimand to up and to including termination. That's why it's not specifically in each policy, to my understanding.
Okay,
I can speak more in detail with other command staff and the chief to confirm my view of that. Though.
No, I actually, with you saying that, I think you're absolutely right, and it was me failing to remember that part. So
okay, no worries.
Okay, thanks.
But I agree with you, Joe. I know that we deal with a lot of labor stuff, and we're required to put those little disclaimers in the policies because we have professional licensed staff. So, and so that there is a thing. You can't just have a general policy that if we review and we think you're out of line, we're going after you. There should be.
Yeah, and that makes sense when they preface the entire policy book, the introduction saying, okay, these are all of our policies, and if you recklessly or negligently or intentionally or willfully fail to abide by these policies, disciplinary action could result up to and including termination. So that makes sense. If that prefaces that makes sense. So I'm good with that.
I think it's everything as far as the business from the chief section. I had notes on here. It mentioned budget stuff, and that's supposed to be by mid-April. I think the proposed budget will be to council, and at that point there'll be more information. Councilor Fishner may have more information on that or more details. But I think budget committee meeting applications will be available after mid-April also.
Yeah, I think the applications are already out.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to take a second on that. That was really just to make sure that we understand that the budget is huge importance to the department and the city. And we just wanted to make sure that this committee was aware of when the budget process would begin and the information would be available to the public. And so we can't talk about what's being proposed in anticipation of it being available to everybody. So the actual proposed budget pages will be online on the city website mid-April, and the budget committee actual meetings will begin at the end of April and will be posted and also available on the website. And I'm happy to send you those links when they are up and available. We just didn't want you to think that we weren't mentioning it. So it's more of a kind of a just making sure you're aware, and we will forward it when more information is available.
Jessica, are you going to get any CARES Act or Relief Act money? Are you going to get an increase in this year, or do you have to cut it?
That's a trick question, Jessica. Be careful. Be careful. He's baiting you.
Not my area of expertise. I
just think there's money out there that we should go after.
Michael, there is, keep your ears to the railroad tracks. So yes, to answer your question, yes.
Great.
The details are not clear yet, but yes, there's a bunch of things out there that I'm really excited about, but that's as far as it gets.
And just to, George, were you going to follow up? I know that Brittany, you had sent a topic of discussion to speak a little bit more in depth about the proposed position reduction, specifically the community service officer. And that's actually why that topic is specifically referenced. I didn't want to go over that. And I do just want to emphasize it is a proposed reduction. And the only reason we previously really featured it was covered in a city council meeting. And we just wanted to make sure that we were acknowledging it and bringing it forward to this committee as well. And so if you do want to have further discussion on that, I'm sure George would, or myself would do our best to answer, but it really is ultimately up to the budget committee and city council. So reiterating, it is in a proposed status.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, I think my question was mostly just, and that was something that got brought up at the last meeting, but we didn't have time to address, was just the if there was going to be a service loss associated with that proposed change. But yeah, if it's appropriate to talk about it at a different time, that's fine as well.
Oh, no.
Now's a good time, but if it's okay. I could jump in if you'd like. And please. My knowledge of the cut is I don't anticipate a proposed service loss. I believe this is a position, Jessica, please correct me, that's been vacant for many years and has not been filled. And it's not like we're taking a position that one of our CSOs in the street and removing that person and saying, you're no longer a CSO. Thank you for your time. This is a position that's been vacant for years. And when we're challenged with identifying budget cuts, we try to find things that have the least amount of impact on the community. A position that hasn't been vacant for so long does have the least amount of impact on the community. And I appreciate your concern about that, quite frankly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's it for me.
I'd like to potentially swap the last two just a little bit. So I was proposing maybe a little change, instead of saying what's happening in our neighborhood per se, to a conversation of, which is fine if there's something you want to say there, but wanted to give a time for the committee, as Brittany's just done. Hey, I'd like to ask or have this as something we discuss, whether it's tonight or gets on the agenda. I think that's helpful. And so just a chance for our team to, if there's something they want to share, is there something they want the Springfield Police Department to be aware of? Is there something they want on our agenda? To take a few minutes to do that from the team as a whole. And then following that, I'd like to have a discussion about meeting frequency. So, but let's first begin just, is there any information or thoughts that we haven't covered tonight you want to make sure that we talk about or at least get on the agenda for next meeting?
I do.
It's Joe.
No, I just want to, I would like to have, and George is doing a good job. I just want to make sure that we maintain good, thorough updates since the last meeting with the PD. You know, that's what, you know, being, gosh, this terminology drives me nuts, but being transparent, but really it's just about being totally open. And George, it does a very good job at how he articulates, and to just bring us up to date each and every meeting, what's happening with the police department, and be ready to say what has changed. So that way we know that it isn't stagnant, things are rolling along, and the public is told, you know, right from the mouth of the lion, saying, okay, these are the changes that we've made since the last time we met. And that is, to me, it's a great progress report. You know, same thing that, you know, we've basically forced the chief to do with the body worn cameras, you know, saying, okay, well, we want to start getting updates and we want them by this date and date certains. Well, in this case, it's a great opportunity for the PD to tell us not only what the PD is doing, but what has the PD changed since the last time we met. And I think that'd be a great litmus test for the city and the public.
Thank you.
It's a good idea. I just like to say, George, you've done a great job. You had to step into a situation tonight. Everything is going on in the department and you answered the call and I appreciate it. You've done a great job. Somebody ought to tell you.
Well, I didn't want to compliment him in public. Good grief, Michael. No,
It's-
I've known George. Well, when you worked for where? You
I
know,
worked for the Lane County Sheriff's Office 24 years ago.
yeah, and who helped train? You know, so it's one of those. Yeah, no, this doesn't surprise me at all, Michael. He always steps up to the plate, and I really appreciate his forthright approach. And you know, you got any questions, he's the person you can go to, and you know you're going to get a straight shot back. That I can tell you from knowing him for the last 2 decades.
Thank you. I'm going to do my best. I'm not sure if I'm going to be the representative here next time. It'll be Chief Nywert or it'll be somebody else. Chief Lewis, I have no idea. The messages I'm hearing tonight are going to be communicated with all those people, and especially the ideas of sharing what's new, what's different, what are we changing. I look forward to having positive conversations about the positive things we're doing. Sharing stories of the officer that did CPR on a dying infant 2 weeks ago. Story of the kid that was Narcaned last night and brought to the hospital, and some of the cool stuff, the fun stuff that happens. And that was most of my career has been that. This has been challenging. Keeping our officers motivated, keeping morale up has been extremely challenging. I know it sounds cliche, but a majority of our officers are really, really good people who do hard work, and this type of stuff that we've discussed tonight is not good for morale. It's not good for just the feeling coming to work. You know, COVID kicked our rear end. We came to work every day, dealt with COVID. Then there was protests. Then there's been lawsuits. There's been a lot of bumps in our road, but I'm confident in the people we have here to overcome that and be able to come in next time and the next time and the next time and share the positive changes we're making. I look forward to it.
For me, I think this community relation person, I'm not sure what the title is. It sounds like you are close. I really hope that this is a person really skilled in building community relations. I probably have to have a police background, I would assume, but I would, as soon as we have that person, I would love them to be at least introduced to this group and a part of our meeting. And I would love for them to be giving, you know, just thoughts and sharing with us too, because I just think there's so much work to be done in this area, and the right person can really help us out immensely.
I agree.
And if I don't get too many people upset, can I just make one more comment just for edification or just for knowledge? Sorry, guys. I mean, I'm really, my heart's into this, and I want to make sure we can be really proud of our agency and make some great changes. But do know, and George, jump in here, tell me I'm wrong, is that there's officers out there that work very hard, and they are above and beyond the average work output than a lot of officers. They're the go-getters. They work hard. They do their job well, but because they work hard in a criminal element, they are exposed to many different things that your average officer is not, at least the frequency, because they're working more cases, et cetera. So keep that in mind. You know, there's going to be officers that their names are going to pop up, but it's because in some cases they work very hard at a higher level, at a higher output than some of their colleagues. And so they're going to be exposed to more things because they're working hard and they're digging in. So I just want to put that out there because people need to make sure they understand that part. I don't want to stymie those hard workers. Okay, I'm done. Sorry.
Yo. Any other? Yes.
So I just want to echo that. Thank you, Lieutenant, for stepping in this, really difficult, challenging sort of middle. But for this committee, I think what I'm wrestling with is I would encourage us, and I apologize for not knowing this. What is the policy review schedule? You have a great deal of policies, and I know that things just come up kind of in response to whatever is bouncing. And when I think about this committee as sort of that policy body and that representation of our community to share feedback on those policies, but I would love to have some kind of idea of the frequency in which the policies are reviewed, as opposed to just as things rise. Or maybe that's what it is, because I know every agency is busy, but I would love to see, if that's not something you guys have a calendar for, or a set schedule or a set review period, I would love to see us even bring forward suggestions on the frequency of review that aren't legislatively, addressed. And I would love for us to reach out a little more and continue. I was so excited to hear you talking about going to visit the different groups and getting that community feedback. And I would like this body to help continue to make space to amplify that and look for ways in which we can support the department's outreach efforts in those different groups. And I made a note for myself. I'm going to send you a couple of community groups that would be great as well to reach out to, that we've leaned into for their expertise and their perspective from the school district. But those are kind of in terms of like a work plan for this committee. I would like to see us listen to the community in which, if there's not already a schedule, which policies should be next, and how the community would like to engage with us to help have their voices be heard in this. That makes sense.
Really good thoughts. Thank you. I don't even know how many policies there are.
I was just going to pull up. That's what I was doing here. Look at the PDF. We have, it looks like 84 chapters in our policy. It's a few hundred pages. I'm going to I probably am misspeaking. I believe there is an annual review-ish. I don't know if there's a set schedule. That's homework for me to do, to find out how often these policies are actually reviewed. I should be able to find that somewhere. The good news is, honestly, nothing prohibits a policy from being reviewed at any given time. If we identify a concern in a policy, it can be brought up, and there's a review process that has to go through several stakeholders, officers, labor, lawyers, counsel. Sometimes it just depends on what we're doing, what we're changing. A lot of people get their hands on it. Sometimes it's just adding a line or some language, but nothing prohibits us from just opening up something and say, we're going to change this next week for whatever reason. And the other good news is our policies are online, and I really strongly encourage this committee and all citizens to take a look at the policies and see what's on there, see what they like and don't like. And I'm not going to sit here and say, well, if you don't like it, we're going to change it. There's obviously a lot of factors to why policies are in place. But I think your feedback and your input, and I'm talking to whoever's watching this, not just the committee, is valuable to us to know what people think. And sometimes we're not going to be able to change it to what people want, but other times there's going to be good suggestions that we will be able to change.
I think Eric has his hand up, Barry.
I apologize, Eric. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Just a follow-up for Jen. Does Springfield Public Schools, do they set up their schedule, or excuse me, their policies to have a sort of date certain review period, so that at least, every quarter or annually or every 3 years, a policy is getting reviewed, regardless of whether something may trigger the need for that? Is that kind of what you're alluding to in asking that?
The reason I bring that up is something we actually just did a complete policy review. It took about 2 years because of all of the life that happens. And so I know that it's super challenging. We do have quarterly, we are very fortunate. We have support through the School Board Association that manages our policy. So whenever the legislative session ends, they provide us updates. And so twice a year we get required updates. And then I think it was every time, the last time they did one was maybe 10 years ago, so that they try and do that wholehearted review. But a good schedule, that's what we're working on as well.
Yes.
You even hit the raise my hand button, so I do this the right way. I just found it in our policy that dictates each policy is reviewed annually by command staff. You're saying, George, why don't you know that you're command staff? I got promoted to command staff level in June. So I have not been able to partake in the whole policy review, and that's probably coming up here soon. I'm looking forward to that. But it is annually, and any changes or deletion of policies has to be made as soon as practical. That language is in there. So if we find something outdated that needs to be deleted, as soon as practical, we do those things. But it's an annual review. So I'll put that on my calendar sometime in the near future.
No.
So Jenna, though, what would be your suggestion for this committee with that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think the charge for this committee would just be that since we know that the command staff is going to review it annually, perhaps we review the policies in advance of whatever next meeting and maybe even prioritize ones that we think could benefit from community input or even explanation. So I very much echo Lieutenant Crowley that there's not often, it's not a just because we or the community has said this is a great idea that it makes sense in the context of the entire, but having the opportunity for us to pull those policies and review puts it in the public, and it allows an opportunity for those conversations and the explanation that comes along with it. And I too am super excited to hear the police department move forward with additional hands that can help put together public materials that can help explain the work that they do so that everyone is educated on how and why those policies are in place. And I just think that my time on this committee has been limited and interrupted by COVID as well, but also I haven't seen us pull policies. It's kind of just been whatever's been brought forward. And I would like a little the responsibility to fall on us and say, you know what, I've looked at the 84 policies, and these are 5 that I think are impactful for the community to be more aware of and understand why they are the way they are, and provide thoughts on how that's interpreted by them.
Anyone else that wants to respond to that or bring something else to the table? Yes, Michael.
I have to change my hand up there. I would like to know if there are any policies about dual relationships, supervisors who interact with subordinates and sexual acting out, what the policies and rules are when that occurs, because it was a big issue many years ago that brought in the other chiefs. So I would like to see that, because I'm really concerned about the trauma that is impacted from that. And I'm also curious about ethics training. We do ethics training every year, and we approach it from a different way. And when people start focusing on that ethics and integrity as a core part, it helps others stand up against stuff that's going on, so there's no enabling. So I would like to know about ethics training.
We just completed ethics training January or February. I think we just finished it up. We do an annual ethics training. We do everything from bias training, identify not just bias towards the public, but our identifying our own biases in our community and our police department. Same with diversity training. We do have ethics training. It's a regular thing we have to do.
It's not a YouTube video, is it? Or,
pardon me?
It's not a YouTube video or something.
It's not a YouTube video, no. Thankfully, no. Yeah, I'm sure all of us have seen some of the lower quality type videos that are put out there for HR purposes, and we all know how effective or ineffective they can be. So we're seeking out everything from certified instructors to recommended features to read through and watch. Regarding the policy, regarding relations, that language has been, I think, crafted. I don't know the status of where it's at, if it's through our city attorney right now or where it's at.
It got implemented, George?
No, the city administrative rules have been put out recently, and we're fine tuning those rules to be more specific to police.
Oh, okay.
Because like the city regulations identify everything from supervisor relations. We have unique relations to the police department as far as supervisor peers, as an instructor and a field training officer. It's not just a sergeant or lieutenant. At different times, different people could be considered at a supervisor level or have that relationship. So we want to make sure we address fine tune the little issues. So there's not wiggle room. So that's being crafted. I think the language is complete and it's to our city attorney, but I'm not positive on that, and I will inquire.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Any other items from the committee? A lot of great thoughts and suggestions and some work to be done. The policies are online. Did I hear you say that? That if we chose as a committee, we could go find those?
Yes, they're on the police department's webpage.
Okay. So on those evenings when you're bored and
You're having trouble sleeping, I recommend finding one of the long chapters that aren't interesting, but there is some interesting stuff in there. I mean, to be honest, it's good to know what goes on and why we do some of the things we do and what some of the rules are and procedures are. So yeah, it may cause it may cure insomnia, but it may keep you awake. It depends on which policy you're reading.
so for me, that's a charge of just trying to figure out a plan, how that looks with so many, how, you know, and so, you know, I'd like to, you know, get input from others and try to put some kind of effective plan together, which we're putting that as a part of our regular agenda. Yeah. Okay. So frequency of meetings, we're charged to meet quarterly as a minimum. We've done just a variety of things. We've gone from monthly for a while, and we did miss a month where we didn't anticipate an extremely heavy load. Is there a sense from this committee on frequency of meetings? Do you have a sense of, do you want to say, hey, we're just going to meet every other month, we're going to meet monthly, or do you want to say, if the chair and vice chair and the Springfield Police Department sense that there's plenty to deal with, we're going to deal with it? Do you see that there's plenty to deal with? Give me some direction, would you please?
I think at this point we have quite a bit to deal with. And there's so much information flowing in and out of the community that I would personally hate to see us go to just one meeting a quarter. I know that we switched a few months ago from doing every other month to monthly meetings, which we're on that schedule now. And I just think that there's just so much happening right now that the public is very concerned with, that we need to address.
Yeah, I support that.
Was that Michael?
Mhm.
Thank you, Joe.
Brittany had her hand up first.
I'm so sorry. I'm not looking at his hands. I'll get better.
Multiple hands in different ways. No worries. No, but I think actually Terry covered pretty much what I was going to say. I think there's a ton to deal with, and if there's a lot of policies for us to review and things like that, I think keeping it as is a great suggestion.
Eric?
Yeah, I was just curious, kind of going back to Jen's question earlier about the frequency of policy review, or understanding there's a fair amount that's in flux right now in terms of command leadership within the department. If there is, within the next 30 days or so, someone will be making a determination of kind of what the prioritization of policy review or work plan for the committee might be, that maybe could be a proposal to us.
Yes.
That would help decide, how often the committee needs to meet. In the interim, perhaps we simply keep it as a regularly scheduled monthly meeting, and if there's not a compelling reason for the committee to meet, that it could be canceled, until such time as there's work for us to do. But I otherwise don't object to keeping it as a monthly schedule.
So someone correct me if I'm out of line, but my recommendation would be that a person or two work with Jessica, I think, to make a proposal for policy review that would work for this team. And instead of us trying to hash that all out and bring that to our next meeting. Is that acceptable? And if it is, are there a person or two that would be willing to work on that?
I would be willing to work on that with Jessica.
Okay.
Yeah, so would I.
Be happy to. Yeah.
Okay. So Brittany, Terry, and Jenna. Jessica, am I in line with that suggestion?
Sounds good. I like it.
Well, wow. Okay. So if your four were able to meet prior to next month's meeting, then you would share with us at that meeting what a proposal is for us to work with.
Agree.
Okay. Perfect. So what I hear now is that we'll meet monthly and especially next month as we will have a proposal to work with any updates that are needed to be made. That was the other piece I think is important. Whatever changes are happening, whatever updates we can hear and receive, I think we need to do as well as we can. Understand the respect of confidentiality in the midst of lawsuits. And as the information comes out, the more transparent we can be, the better off we're going to be. So that's my thought. Okay.
Can I ask Jessica one thing? Jessica, would you like to send out an inquiry as to when the best time to meet or suggest a best time to meet?
We'll definitely coordinate that and
Yeah.
send that to you. Probably just ask general questions on dates and we'll revise from there. Happy.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Barry, I had one follow-up just if you want to discuss it. And Eric kind of brought it up as the canceling of a meeting. It isn't like we ever really planned for that, but we hadn't established a distinct protocol on whether it was something that to just speak with the chair or the entire committee. And so since this is a topic of discussion and we just want to be respectful and so we all know the process, maybe this wouldn't be a bad time. And I'm sorry I know it's close to being done, but it seems like the right time to mention.
Yeah. Joe.
Well, might I suggest that prior to a meeting and prior to the public notice requirements for public meetings, that the agenda, so to speak, can be reviewed quickly with the chair and vice chair and the police rep, and decide at that point, say, okay, do we have enough stuff here, so to speak, to fill up the agenda and make use of these folks' time, or at that time say, hey, we don't have anything. Then you fire out an email to the group saying, hey, we don't have anything that looks like it justifies a meeting at this moment. Do any of you have anything that's pressing that you want to see come forward in the next regular scheduled meeting time? If you don't get a response within a very short, reasonable amount of time, then I would say, okay, well, we're canceling this meeting, and then you don't have to do any public notice or public cancellations or anything like that.
Is that acceptable to the group as a whole? I think that's kind of where I was leaning to. Clearly, we will have next month's meeting because we have some things to hear back on. But if Jessica and Johnny and myself were able to get a sense, and if there's a representative, one of the officers, then we'll look that over and communicate clearly with the team the need to meet or maybe the need to wait 1 month. Is that acceptable?
Acceptable.
Great. Jessica, can you write up the new policy?
Jenna's got her hand up.
Yes.
I guess and I know we're all busy, I would actually put the onus on us. And I think if we formalized it and just said, if you have pressing matters, the agenda items, that we get them to the chair and to just like with a copy to Jessica the week in advance, so that there isn't oh, I missed the email and I'd like to add something, and we do a little bit of that back and forth. It would be very transparent for the public to know that the expectation would be to see something the Thursday before scheduled meeting. And that way there's a rhythm. So we know if we want to put something on the agenda, the expectation is a week, no later than a week before. If you haven't shared it the week before, then it's for the next month unless it's an emergency.
I like that a lot better than Joe's idea.
I apologize. I just missed the first part. I hate that. Would
I
you say
just,
it again?
yep, absolutely. I just think that the onus should be on the committee as well, and to keep it clear and transparent for our community, that we all commit to, if we believe we have an agenda item, making sure that you and Johnny and Jessica get an email that by no later than the Thursday prior to our meeting, since our meetings
Okay,
are on
thank you.
Thursday.
Thank you. Great. Yes, because if someone on this committee team felt that there was something important, we would meet. We would definitely do that. Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to encourage us to continue to remember, we all strive for conducting that business here so that our community can hear what we're saying and doing. And I don't want us to get in a situation where we're emailing back and forth and suddenly we've solved something in our brilliance that makes it easy to not have a meeting, but then we haven't had the opportunity to share that with our community.
Which I think then great reminder is that if there is work that's done, it's presented, the work that has been accomplished at this occasion, so that the public that is choosing to listen is informed. Okay.
Great.
Eric has his hand up, Barry.
Oh man, I'm slow. Yes, Eric, sorry.
You're doing fine. You're doing fine. So not to belabor this, but Jen raised a good point for me in terms of public meetings law and the function of this body. Is it a decision-making body, or is it an advisory body with respect to, there are certain rules and limitations about having email communications, telephone communications, the number of people that are engaged in those things, and having discussions that could inform a decision at some later date. So I don't know, that's not really come up to this point because we've not been talking about substantive policy making necessarily, but that might be something we need to get clarity on from city attorney's office, Councilor Piscineri. I don't know if that makes sense to do or not.
That totally does. This is an advisory committee. It is not a decision-making committee.
Not elected.
Period. And it's strictly something where we have recommendations from this committee that gets forwarded to the council for decisions. They're the decision-making body. As far as, because we can't as individuals make any decisions, et cetera, then I think that that's not an issue, Eric, and I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think we're free to discuss whatever amongst ourselves. But like what Jana was saying earlier, at the risk of being transparent to the community, whatnot, that's something that we shouldn't engage in and should only be talking in public. So, but I think, Jessica, if you can make a note, maybe to give Mary B a call or email and say, hey, does this in any way, shape, or form, does this committee communicating back and forth have to be cautious or cognizant of the public meetings laws and its limitations? But I think we're fine, Eric.
I do too.
Yeah.
I looked into it one time several years ago.
Yeah, I have, but it seems like every time I look into it, I get a different thing, so, because those laws change a ton.
Sure.
I can't meet with the counselor for a cup of coffee.
As soon as we're elected, we're done.
Yeah. Totally.
This is great. I appreciate all your expertise that helps me know how to better lead. So thank you, everyone. I really, really appreciate everyone's input, and I'm grateful, Lieutenant Crowley, for you being with us tonight, and thank you for stepping in, and just grateful for that. Any final words that someone has as we close tonight?
You did a great job, Barry. This was first.
I'm okay if I get, reelected or not reelected. Someone else said.
I can tell you all about that.
I didn't even run. So anyway, all right. I appreciate everyone. We will be meeting next, what's that date? Jessica, do you have it in mind? First Thursday in May. I'll look it up.
First Thursday in May is the 6th.
So we are on for Thursday, the 6th. It'd be the 5th, right?
The 6th.
That's a Wednesday.
May 6th is
You're right.
accurate, sorry.
Yeah, my bad. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.